everyone, welcome to my February TBR video. I've done several TBR videos in the past, and this time I'm switching things up a bit. So I've done like a random generator prompt, I've done my fiance and my roommates pick my next reads, but this time I'm going to do the really popular TBR jar trend. I first saw Rachel Catherine doing this, and I feel like she kind of started the trend for it, and I now see booktubers doing it all the time, so I thought I would hop on board because this is something I can do like month after month and not run out of prompts. Only problem is I didn't have a jar I wanted to use, so instead I'm using this bag. My sweet roommates got me this for my birthday, and it has a little depiction of Valaris on the front, and I thought what better way to use a bookish bag than for bookish things. So I've filled this bag with a bunch of prompts. Some of them are prompts that kind of get me out of my comfort zone for reading. Some of them are just like fun ones, like reading a book with a certain color on the cover, but I'm going to pick 8 out of here, and that's going to be my goal for February. So we'll see what we get. First, I'm going to shake it up really good. It's honestly kind of hard to shake, but I feel like they're mixed up in there pretty good. So let's get started. Also, before I read this, I think what I'm gonna do is pull out all 8 prompts and then decide the books. But with that being said, let's read our first prompt. Ends in an odd number of pages. So I feel like this could be a lot of books because it's not genre specific. I'll literally just have to find a book I might be interested in reading and then see if it ends in an odd number of pages. Let's choose prompt number 2. This is a tiny one. A romantasy. I'm happy to see this because that's my favorite genre, so I know I'm gonna like whatever I pick. Going for prompt number 3. Purple on the cover. That's interesting. I do have a specific stack because the shelf behind me is like basically completely color coordinated, so that'll be easy to just go to my purple books and look through those. Going for prompt number 4. This one says, takes place in another country. I actually don't know off the top of my head if I have any books that take place in another country, so I'll have to look, and if I don't, I will redraw for this one. Prompt number 5. Ooh, takes place on the beach. This one, I feel like I might have one that this works for, but also interesting that I got this one. I feel like this is more of a summary prompt, and I'll be reading this in February, so definitely interesting, not what I normally would have gone for. I'm gonna like reach the bottom of the bag for this one. A book that trended in 2023. So 2024 just started. I feel like I have a lot of options because I bought a lot of really popular books from 2023. 2 more prompts left to pick. Yellow on the cover. I already have a book in mind that I think I'll end up picking. For our last prompt, we have published this year. That's gonna be really hard because there's only a month into the year. So once again, if I can't find one that this works for, I will redraw for that. I could do Crescent City 3, but I think I'm gonna start that in January because I'm gonna want to start it the day it comes out, so I don't know if I can count that for this. And I also will have a Crescent City 3 spoiler vlog coming out very soon, might already be up, so definitely subscribe and turn my notifications on so you can see when that comes out. It's gonna be a really fun video. Okay, let's get started. First one I know I'm gonna choose is yellow on the cover. You can't really see, but under this pink shelf I have a bunch of yellow books, and there's one that I actually just got in the mail today, and that is The 7-Year Slip. I've been hearing incredible things about this book, and honestly this could also work for the book that trended in 2023 prompt, but I think I want to use it for the yellow on the cover book because out of all my yellow covered books, this is the one I'm the most excited to read. So we're adding The 7-Year Slip by Ashley Poston. I'm not really sure how to pronounce it. I don't know a lot about this, but I know that it's kind of a general fiction romance that also has some magical realism elements, so that sounds super intriguing to me, and this is first on our list. For our next prompt, let's go with the purple on the cover prompt because there aren't as many options to choose from. I'm gonna look at my purple stack, but I do also have my book of the month books in a different shelf, and there may be some purple covers over there. Okay, so I actually just went and looked, and none of my book of the month books have purple on the cover that I haven't read yet. In my purple stack, there's only one book that is the first or standalone. The rest of them are like later in a series, and there are some other books I have that have like bits of purple on the cover, but I feel like to truly stick to this prompt, I need to pick a book where the cover is primarily that color. So I'm not gonna cheat, and I'm gonna go with literally what my only option is, and that is Filthy Rich Vampire. I know it doesn't look super purple on camera, camera, but like all these flowers are purple and the background even has like a purple tint to it. So this is by Geneva Lee. I have no clue what this book is about. I was sent it by the publisher and it sounds really intriguing, but yeah, this was the only option, so we're sticking it on the list. And I'm honestly really glad because I don't think this is a book I would have gravitated towards otherwise if I was just randomly picking books off my shelf. So I'll be glad to check this one off in February. 2 prompt picks down, let's move on to the next. I'm gonna go with the romantasy prompt next because I know I have so many options and so many that I'm looking forward to reading. I also know I'm probably gonna be in a huge book slump after finishing Crescent City 3, so I'm gonna need another amazing romantasy to get me back into reading. So I have 3 books that I'm very heavily leaning towards, but I can't decide. But those books are The Serpent and the Wings of Night. I've had this on my shelf forever, ever since it started getting a lot of hype. This could also count for a book that trended in 2023, so that is a good thing to consider because this was so popular on TikTok. Another one is Once Upon a Broken Heart. I read the Carval trilogy like a year or 2 ago and loved it, and I've heard nothing but good things about this series, but for some reason I have yet to pick up this trilogy and start it. This one's also shorter than my other 2 options, so that might be a good pick. And then my last option I'm considering is Gold. This is the newest release in the Plated Prisoner series, which is one of my favorite fantasy romance series. I seriously was addicted to it when I first read it, and I flew through like the first, I think it was like 4 or 5 books, but it's been a while since I've like been in that world and been in that series because I did have to wait for this one to come out, and I just haven't picked it up, so I'm not sure. Like I said, Once Upon a Broken Heart is a lot shorter than the other 2, so part of me does want to lean towards that, but I think I'm gonna go with Gold just because I've kind of been putting it off and I'm not sure why, and I'm excited to jump back into this world, and also because I feel like these other 2 could go for some of the other prompts. I am very excited to read these, but I think I am gonna stick Gold on there just because the sooner I get back into this world, this series, and this plot, the better. And even though it's really long, I have flown through all the other books. So we're adding Gold by Raven Kennedy to my TBR for February. If you don't know what this series is about, it's loosely based on the legend of King Midas, which really intrigued me when I first started the series. Now, I will say, if you're looking into reading this series, just ignore how bad the first book is. I did pick this book for romantasy because it is romantasy, but the first book is not like romantic in any way, so just keep that in mind if you do decide to go into the series, and maybe look up trigger warnings because it can get pretty dark. But after the first book, highly recommend the series, and it's totally worth pushing through the first book to get to how amazing the rest of it is. I'm gonna keep these 2 books kind of right beside me and not put them back on their shelves yet because I am really looking forward to getting into these, so if I can use them for another prompt, I may do that also. Okay, I'm gonna next look for a book that takes place on the beach. I'm trying to think off the top of my head if I have anything, but I'm not sure that I do, so I'm gonna have to look around through my shelves for a minute. Okay, for this prompt, I found 3 very different options. So the first option is The Fury by Alex, I can never say his last name right. I'm not even gonna attempt to pronounce it, but this is the same author who wrote The Silent Patient, which is wildly popular. This was my most recent book of the month box pick, and I do need to be better about reading my book of the month books because I usually just tend to set them aside and like get to them later instead of reading them the month that I got them. And this is a thriller, so we don't have any thrillers on the list yet, so I feel like this one could be a good option. We also have The Hotel Nantucket by Elin, not sure how you say it, Hildebrand. I've never read this author before, but I've heard nothing but great things, and I actually thrifted this book from a Goodwill, which I love doing whenever I can because I love to like repurpose books and help them find a new home where they can be loved. It has been sitting on my shelf for quite a while, so I do really want to get around to this, but to me this feels like such a summer read, and I think it would be perfect to read in the summer. And then my third option is Malibu Rising by Taylor Jenkins Reid. I actually have DNF'd this book before, I think twice, but I never got farther than like 60 pages into it, and I've enjoyed other books I've read by Taylor Jenkins Reid. Daisy Jones and the Six is one of my absolute favorite books of all time, and I also really enjoyed Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. Definitely wasn't a favorite of mine, but I did have a good time reading it, so I feel like I should like this book, but for some reason when I've tried in the past, I haven't been able to get into it, so part of me does really want to give it another go. I just don't know if now is the time. Like I said about the Ellen Hildebrand book, I feel like they're both very summery books, so I think I'm gonna go with The Fury just because it's a thriller, and I feel like even though it takes place at the beach, it makes sense to read it in winter because it's a thriller. I actually don't really know what this is about, but I did read on the inside cover that it takes place on a private island in Greece, and I think I'm gonna let myself go into it blind because that's what I did with The Silent Patient, also by this author, and I really enjoyed it. So our fourth book for the February TBR is The Fury, and also this cover is so cool. I'm also just now realizing that The Fury could have worked for the takes place in another country prompt because it does take place in Greece, but now that I've already decided it, I can't go back and change my mind. So next we're gonna try and find something that also takes place in another country so that it can fit this prompt. I will also say, as much as I'd love for fantasy to count, like if it's in another world, I'm not gonna let that count because it specifically says like country, so I'm thinking like real life countries. So as much as I'd love to kind of cheat and say a fantasy world is another country, I'm gonna pick like a real country. Okay, so I have searched and searched my bookshelves, and I've even like done a little bit of research about where authors are from, because surprisingly the majority of thriller books I've read are by British authors, so they often take place like somewhere in the UK. But of the thrillers I looked up, it seems like they take place in the US, so I'm not even gonna like chance picking that if it's not gonna fit the prompt. The only two I can find that fit the prompt are The Spanish Love Deception. I do know this takes place in Spain. I've heard complete mixed reviews about this book, and I honestly don't know if it sounds like something I would like. I picked it up because I found it at a thrift store for a really good price, and like I said earlier, I really love to repurpose old books, and I do want to get around to this at some point, but it's never really in the forefront of my mind. But it does fit the description on the prompt, so that is one to consider. And my other option is The Brothers Hawthorne. I read The Inheritance Games, and that does take place in Texas in the US, but I read the description on this and it says something about the brothers being across the globe from each other, so I know at least some part of this book has to take place in another country. Also, similarly to The Spanish Love Deception, I've heard very mixed reviews on this. A lot of people that had loved the Inheritance Games trilogy have said this doesn't really live up to the hype, and that made me really nervous to read it because I also love the Inheritance Games and I don't want to have like negative feelings towards this series, this author, or these characters. But I think I am gonna go with this one just because I do know there's another book coming out in the future and I'm gonna want to read that, so I need to read this one first, and I have really been putting this one off, so we're gonna stick it on the list. I feel like this one could be a good option to listen to on audio, and I'm trying to listen to like one audiobook a month, so this one could be a good contender to be an audiobook. So I'm adding The Brothers Hawthorne by Jennifer Lynn Barnes on the list. So as I was looking at the 3 prompts I have left, I noticed a stack of books I have over here of recently purchased books, and I found another book that had purple on the cover, and that's Binding 13, which I do really want to read, but since I already picked my book for that prompt, I'm gonna have to leave this one off the list. But I'm kind of upset that I didn't notice this one sitting over there, but I feel like this could count for a book that trended in 2023. I know this one was also maybe popular in 2022, but I feel like it definitely got more hype in 2023. However, I do also really want to read Once Upon a Broken Heart, which trended in 2023, and Serpent, I just threw that. And I want to read Serpent in the Wings of Night, which trended in 2023. So I'm not sure, but out of these 3 books, I do feel like Serpent in the Wings of Night trended the most. So I feel like it's only right for that to be my book for the prompt trended in 2023. So I am going to add Serpent in the Wings of Night to my TBR list. Since I do really want to read both of these books, I'm going to look to see if either of these books end in an odd number of pages, and if one of them does, that will be the book I choose for that prompt. Okay, so this one ends in 603 pages, so this could be the book for that prompt, but I'm also going to check this one and see. Okay, this one ends in 402, so it cannot count for the prompt. So I will be putting Binding 13 on my TBR. I think this is the only contemporary romance we have on the list so far, and this is another one I've heard mixed reviews about. Some people love it, some people hate it, but I really want to read it simply for how floppy the book is. I love it. I'm also starting to feel like we have some really long books on this list, but let's see what I think about this book. We have one more book to choose for this list, and the last prompt was published this year, and I genuinely do not think I have a book. Look through my shelves and I do not have any that were published this year. I will say what my February book of the month book ends up being could be a new release, because they do often do that, but I won't know what that book is until the day I choose, which is like the last day of January, and I'm currently filming this on like 22nd. I don't even know what day it is, 23rd, 22nd, something like that. So I don't want to wait that long since I am currently filming the video. So we're gonna redraw for another prompt, but I am gonna put this back in the bag so that I can get it another time later this year. Please give me something good. Okay, this one says, a book by an author you love. Oh my gosh, there's so many. So part of me did want to still go with Once Upon a Broken Heart because I do really enjoy Stephanie Garber's writing. I feel like I can't say Stephanie Garber is an author I love, but I have enjoyed her books. But unfortunately, I'm not gonna cheat, so I'm gonna put this one aside and hopefully we can get it next month. I have a book that I think I'm gonna go with. I actually have several other books by this author, but this one was just calling my name. So I'm gonna go with the Happy Ever After playlist by Abby Jimenez. I have actually only read 2 books by Abby Jimenez, but the second I finished Yours Truly, I think was the first one I read, I went out and like bought all her books because I absolutely was obsessed and I love her writing so much. I recently just finished another of hers, so she's quickly becoming one of my top favorite authors, specifically for contemporary romance, and I needed a short book to stick on the list also, so we're going with the Happy Ever After playlist by Abby Jimenez. I don't know what this one's about, but for some reason I want to say it's like a celebrity and a non-celebrity, and the celebrity loses his dog and she finds it or something like that. I'm not really sure, but I have heard wonderful things about this, and given how much I love Abby Jimenez, I have no doubt that I'm gonna love this book. So let's recap the 8 books I have on my TBR for February. I also do just want to give a disclaimer that I probably will not read all of these books. I try to be a mood reader, so I will not let myself stick to my TBR if I am in the mood for something else. These are just the ones I hope to get to in February, and maybe I will. I also try to keep my TBR a little bit smaller because sometimes when I make these videos I go a little bit too ambitious and I go for like 10 or 12 books and then it starts to feel overwhelming, but I definitely think 8 books could be doable in February depending on literally a million different things, how busy I am, how much time I have for reading. But those 8 books I have on the list that are going to be at the forefront of my mind for the month of February are the Happy Ever After playlist by Abby Jimenez, Binding 13 by Chloe Walsh, The Serpent and the Wings of Night by Carissa Broadbent, The Brothers Hawthorne by Jennifer Lynn Barnes, The Fury by Alex, I'm gonna try and pronounce it, Michaelides. I'm sure someone in the comments will tell me if I'm totally wrong, but that's how I read it. Gold by Raven Kennedy, Filthy Rich Vampire by Geneva Lee, and The 7-Year Slip by Ashley Poston. I feel like we have a really, really good lineup here and a good mix of genres. We have 2 that are at least some type of contemporary romance. We have 1, 2, 3 romantasy. At least I'm assuming Filthy Rich Vampire is romantasy. We have 1 thriller and 1 YA mystery. So I feel like that's a pretty good spread. And yeah, I really enjoyed doing my TBR prompts this way. I prefer this so much more over doing the generator, but I'm excited to read these books, and I'll see you guys in my next video or next month if you come back for my March TBR video. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, all of that stuff. It would really help me out, and I do plan to be making more book related content soon. And if you want to see more book related content right now, you can head over to my TikTok page. I'm posting book content on there literally all the time, as well as like daily life type content, and I will have it linked in the bio along with my Instagram if you want to follow me on Instagram as well. And I'm gonna have my Goodreads linked in my bio because I recently learned from all my followers on TikTok that you guys actually wanted my Goodreads profile, and I've been overwhelmed with the amount of support I've received from you guys. Tons of people have added me on there, which is seriously the best. And if you do add me on Goodreads, I will try my best to add you back as I go through all the requests. And yeah, thank you so much for watching, and bye guys.